My what sold videos from the last 2 weeks were super long, and that's because each video was about 2 weeks worth of sales. And in each week, I sold a decent number of items. In today's video, if you blink for too long, you will miss it because not a lot sold. We're only talking about 1 week. This is going to be a shorty. Let's get into it. Hi everyone, my name is Becky Park. I am a part-time reseller and I was very part-time in the week of sales that we're about to talk about. We're going to talk about sales from September 1st through the 7th. And why was I so part-time? I don't even know. I think I was sick for part of it, honestly. Yes, my asthma was out of control and still kind of is, although it's a bit better, but it was out of control this week and I was barely making it through work, and then I would come home from work and I would pass out at like 6:30 or 7 and just sleep till the next day. Like, it was bad. I just was having such difficulty being a normal human being and breathing the way that I should be able to breathe. I was on a steroid. I was on an antibiotic because like there was kind of a lung infection happening. There was a lot of stuff going on. I'm better now though. Still having to use my inhaler every once in a while, but I think that the rough season has passed. But let's go ahead and jump right into my sales from this week. We're going to start by talking about September 1st, which was a Monday. I had a few sales, and the first one was over on Poshmark. It was this Chico's women's size large floral bell sleeve knit top. It was black with like metallic threading, and I used words like boho and cottagecore in the listing title, even though cottagecore technically doesn't utilize so much black, but I was hurting for keywords, so I just threw it in there. I got this in May of 2025 at my local consignment store's birthday sale. And my average cost of goods for everything that I got that day was $3.79. And so my net profit was $12.21. And shockingly, that one sold in like a week or two. I remember listing it and being like, okay, I'm going to sit on this for a while and that's okay. And then it sold really, really fast. Chico's has actually been doing the best for me than it's ever been in all of my history of reselling. Like, I feel like maybe I'm just figuring out which Chico's pieces to pick up and maybe I'm pricing it better. I don't know, but it is selling much faster than it usually has. And I'm enjoying it. Like, I'm enjoying picking up Chico's. Who thought I would ever say that out loud? The next thing to sell was over on Depop. And I'm just going to give you a foreshadowing. I had 4 Depop sales this week, which is unheard of. And if you follow me on Facebook, you know that 50% of my Facebook content is just complaining about Depop, and something about that is triggering their algorithm. They're like,
I don't know, this girl's pretty unhappy with us. Like, let's just throw some sales her way.
I don't know what's going on, but I sold this Free People movement Scouted Out, that was the style name, women's faux shearling vest with a snap front. It was in the color rose. This sold on Depop for $52. I had $7.99 into it from a local thrift store, and I had picked it up on August 6th of 2025. That was listed for like probably 3 weeks, and my net profit was $37.29, which is pretty great. On Depop, they don't take fees, like seller fees, but I did have this boosted. So I did give them like, I think it's 8% in fees, which I will take any day because they take so little to begin with. Now, this item, I got a minimum of, let's say like 8 to 10 offers on Depop. The majority of which I accepted, maybe 1 or 2 of them I countered, but I accepted a minimum of 5 to 6 offers on this piece just for people not to pay. It is the most infuriating thing about Depop. The fact that they can send you an offer, and when you accept, that doesn't mean that the money gets taken out of their bank account. It means they could think about it a little bit more. And some people even had the audacity. They would send me an offer on this and I would accept, and then they'd come back and be like, would you actually take blah, blah, blah amount? And I'm like, what are you doing? This is not how it works. Is this your first day being a human being? Like, I don't understand why you would send me an offer. I would accept it. And then you'd be like, actually, would you take less? Yeah. But finally, someone offered me $52. And when I accepted, they paid. And it's crazy that that sounds like a novel idea, but I was just resigned to the idea that this was never going to sell. but thankfully it did. And I was really, really happy with that flip. This particular thrift store that I go to, I feel like I find really good Free People pieces there randomly. And it's weird because this thrift store is not a very good thrift store. I don't usually find very good items, but every once in a while I will find Free People stuff that sells really well. Super random. Also on the 1st on eBay, this is another random sale. I sold this Lego Pirates of the Caribbean Sony PS3 video game. I put words like family friendly and friendly fun. What? I don't know. Fun and clean disc. I think that last one was pretty important. But this sold on eBay for $8.39. I had a 30% off sale running, and my net profit on that was $5.02. I didn't have any money into that because my neighbors on where are you? On this side, my neighbors on this side, they moved about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. They had grown kids, so it was just, a retired couple. And as they were getting ready to move, because we had gotten to know them, over the course of being in this house for like a year or two, and they would ask, because we had kids, they're like, oh, do your kids play video games? Do your kids like arts and crafts? And they would just give us stuff that they had in our house because they didn't want to move it with them. And they were moving to Dallas, which is, pretty far from where we live right now. They even gave us their grand piano, which was crazy. They literally gave that to us for free because they wanted it to go to a good home and they didn't want to take that to their new home. But one of the things that they gave me was like a big bin of video games. It was like Xbox games, PS3, some PS4. I'm looking at it. I don't know, like a bunch of different video game consoles because clearly their boys, when they were younger, played video games a lot. Most of them, because I asked on Instagram, I asked on Facebook, I asked all of you, hey, are any of these really good games? None of them were, those really rare, exciting games that people get super happy about finding. I had very kind of run-of-the-mill, normal games, but I went ahead and listed a handful of them. I still have a lot more to list, and this was the first of them to sell. I'm not going to make a huge profit, but I didn't have any money into those, so that was exciting. And then moving on to the 2nd of September, which was a Tuesday, on eBay, I sold this new with tags Talbot's green turtleneck sweater in a women's plus size 2X. I did use words like classic and lightweight in the listing title. That sold for $25 on eBay, and it took a little over 2 months for it to sell. I got it at an estate sale that happened in my neighborhood in May, like at the beginning of May, and I got this at the half off sale, so I had $250 into it, and my net profit was $16.61. Not too shabby. Also on the 2nd on Poshmark, I sold this Ash and Erie red plaid flannel slim button-up shirt in a men's size extra small. I used words like cozy and lumberjack and fall in the listing title. That sold on Poshmark for $20. I had $379 into it from a local consignment store's birthday sale in May. That's the same place I got that Chico's piece that I talked about at the beginning of this video. And so my net profit was $12.21. And I remember being a little weary of picking that up, but I threw it in my bag. Anyway, I was weary because it was such a small size for men, but it took maybe like 2.5 months to sell, which I don't think is crazy. And small people need clothes too, guys. Like men who wear an extra small, they also need clothing. And also like maybe a woman bought that, like you never know. But yeah, I don't shy away from picking up smaller sizes. I just don't want to pay as much for them. And then on the 3rd and the 4th, 0 sales as I laid in bed, just unable to breathe and function. Nobody bought anything, which was perfectly fine with me because that meant I didn't have to trudge into the basement and try to, ship these items out. But on the 5th of September, which is a Friday, on Depop, another Depop sale, I sold this vintage Coldwater Creek women's tapestry jacket in a size medium. It was made of 100% cotton, and I used keywords like granny core and boho in the listing title because look at it. Like, look at how beautifully granny core this is. And literally, I picked this up with the intention of having it sell on Depop. I was like, this is such a Depop sale. And I feel like Coldwater Creek, Alfred Dunner, those kind of like super mature brands, they make the perfect granny core type pieces, especially if you find the vintage pieces, because they're just more well constructed. I used to pass on those brands all the time, but now if it's within this style and this aesthetic, like that granny core, but still somehow like current and trendy aesthetic, I pick it up no matter what because it can make really good money. I sold this on Depop for $40. I had $9.49 into it. That's how much faith I had in this piece. And my net profit was $28.21. I got that in January of this year while my students were rehearsing for an all-state musical festival that they had made. And while they rehearsed, I just went thrifting. The reason it took me so long to get this listed, because I didn't list this until August. So this was really only listed for like a couple weeks, if even. It took me so long because one of the buttons was super loose. But when we went to Seattle in July, my mother-in-law took us to the airport. Like we drove to her house in Chicago and then she took us to the airport. And she told me before we left for our trip, she was like, if you have any clothes at home that need to be dry cleaned, because she helps out at a dry cleaners right now, or just needs to be fixed up in any way or if needs to be altered, like bring it to me and I'll do that while you guys are on your trip. So I put together a small bag of things that needed mending, including this jacket. I just needed someone to make the button like a little bit tighter and to match the other buttons. And so when we finished up our trip from Seattle, she picked us up and she had that bag of stuff that she had mended and dry cleaned. It was all in our trunk. And I listed this and like I said, it sold literally right away. Love it. Like anything tapestry, anything patchwork, anything vintage from Coldwater Creek, Alfred Denner. I'm trying to think of the other brands, but any of those like, yeah, mature grandma brands, they can do really well. And then moving on to the 6th of September, which was a Saturday, on Poshmark, I sold this pair of Ralph Lauren women's size 10 blue straight leg floral embroidered jeans. These sold on Poshmark for $25. I got them from my local consignment store's birthday sale in July. I had $1.95 into them and my net profit was $18.05. And those took, like a month or two to sell, which I was pretty happy with. Most embroidered jeans that are made by decent brands, brands obviously like Ralph Lauren, which is what I have here. There's one brand, I can't remember the name of it right now. If I find this one brand's floral embroidered denim, I always pick it up. I can't remember now, but it's like known for their embroidered jeans. Anyway, I just think it's a good pickup and I made a decent amount of money on that, $18.05. And then moving on to the 7th, which was a Sunday, I had 3 sales this day. 2 of them were on Depop and 1 was on my website, which is wild. It's crazy. So the first Depop sale was this pair of Joe's Socialite bootcut mid-rise jeans in a women's size 27. They had stretch to them. They were made of a denim and they were casual. I remember these 2 items on Depop sold as a bundle. So the first item, this pair of jeans, I sold for $25. I had $7.89 into them. And that was something that I got, same thing, while I was thrifting as my students rehearsed for their all-state music festival. But I didn't get around to listing these until a few months ago. So they sold in a few months and my net profit was $15.78. Joe's is a brand that I have consistently been passing on. It does retail for a ton, but typically I'm just finding their older styles. However, this was a boot cut. So I was like, well, boot cut is kind of back in. Flared jeans are definitely back in. So let me just give it a try. And I was happy with that sale. And then the second item that I sold in this bundle, and by the way, this bundle sold to a viewer named Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, if you're watching, thank you so much. It was this New with Tags Dockatoo, which is like an Amazon brand. It was this blue plaid lined hooded flannel shacket in a women's size small. It was like an oversized fit. That sold to Elizabeth for $25. I actually got that for free from Amazon. And so I didn't have any money into it. And my net profit was $23.67. So the funny thing is, Elizabeth reached out to me and she was like, hey, I want these 2 items. Can I get them in a bundle? And I was like, sure. But we were both like, how do you sell items in bundles on Depop? And I was like, well, I'll just do like the old school way that I used to do on like Mercari, which is where I would just make a new listing and I would call it bundle for, whoever the buyer was. And so that's what I did. I said bundle for Elizabeth. I put these 2 items in there and she just bought the bundle and that was easy. However, since then, I have learned that you can actually turn on your bundling feature and you can offer a straight up bundle discount. Like you can say, hey, if you bundle more than 1 item in a bundle, you can automatically get this kind of discount. So I have now turned on in my Depop store, a 20% what is it? A 20% discount on all bundles. Let me know if you bundle on Depop and if that helps you. This is literally still the first and only bundle sale that I've ever had on Depop, but I'm looking forward to more. And it was interesting because she could request that I turn on my bundle features, and that's how I did it. So it was a learning experience for both of us. She was like, this is my first time buying on Depop. And I was like, this is my first time selling a bundle. So we're both learning here. And I, to date, have yet to purchase anything on Depop. That's something I should try at some point too. But very happy to let go of those pieces and sell them to Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, I hope you love both of them. So the final sale, and like I said, this was shocking because it was on my website, which is shopbeckypark.com. I haven't listed new pieces over there in forever. So whenever I sell anything on there, I'm shocked. But it was this Rachel Zoe green palm print long sleeve shirt in a women's size medium. That one sold for $19.95. I had $3.45 into it from a local consignment store in May of 2023. So like I said, anything that's on that website still is pretty old. Those are stale listings. My net profit was $9.77 because on my website, I also pay for shipping. So generally speaking, anything that's on my website, it is the lowest amount that I'm willing to go on an item, and I pay for shipping as well. I really need to just list more stuff over there, my stale list listings, and let you guys know about it because like I said, I'm offering them at rock bottom prices and paying for shipping. So, that's a huge incentive. But yeah, I don't have the time right now to commit to a platform that doesn't really reward me with a lot of sales, but that was very surprising and I was very happy for it. So let's talk about my numbers. On eBay, I sold 2 items and that was for a gross sales amount of $43.39. I had $250 into those items and so my net profit was $21.81. On Depop, I sold 4 items and that was for a gross sales amount of $142. And the shocker of the week is that I made the most money on Depop this week. Like, I'm just realizing that as the words come out of my mouth right now. That probably will never happen to me again, but that's how poorly I did on my other platforms. I had $25.37 into those items, and so my net profit was $104.95. I sold 3 items on Poshmark for a gross sales amount of $65. My cost of goods for those 3 items was $9.53. So my net profit on Poshmark was a measly $42.47. And I had 1 sale on my website for a gross sales amount of $19.95. I had $3.47 into that item. And so my net profit was $9.77. In total, I sold 10 items this week for a gross sales amount of $270.34. My cost of goods was $40.87, and my net profit was $179 for the entire week. And like I said, that was a combination of just like being sick, not having listed a ton the week before because of the fact that I had just started school and was super busy. Those are not the kinds of numbers that we want to see. But let's talk about how much of money I've earned from that estate sale I mentioned briefly thus far, as well as how much money I've made in the year 2025 in net profit. So from the estate sale that I went to in May, I only sold 1 item this particular week for a net profit of $16.61. And so thus far, I have sold 145 items from that estate sale for a net profit of $2,959.85. And my net profit for the entire year thus far is $12,972.40. I think I had set a goal for myself of like $30,000 in net profit. And unless I have the most monstrous Q4, like that's just not going to happen. I'm going to be lucky to even crack $20,000 in net profit, which is pretty low compared to normal years. I do think like I've been putting in less and less with each year just because my life gets busier, my kids' lives get busier. I'm just not putting in as much of an effort when it comes to my reselling business as I have in years past. But the fact that I've made almost $13,000 in net profit, I still am pretty proud of that. And I think that that's really like life-changing money that some people would be thrilled to have, you know? So I'm really happy with that. Do I wish it was more? Absolutely. But the good news is in my next What Sold video, I'm going to be talking about my birthday week, and I ran a birthday sale, and it was very successful. I sold a ton of stuff, moved a lot of product, and I think I made some good money. So I'm excited for that video. That one's gonna be like 5 times longer than today's. But thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet or liked the video, this is your chance to do it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!